The two top officials in Afghanistan today are meeting with Biden, President Joe Biden, basically at a moment when much of the country is in danger of being swallowed up by the Taliban. He's meeting with President Joe Biden is meeting with the Afghanistan president. Now I'm not sure if I'm saying that right because with their country and everything, they got some weird fucked up names. Um, the Afghanistan president is, it looks like Ashraf Ghani, but I don't know if I'm saying that right. And the chairman of Afghanistan's High Council for National Reconciliation, Dr. Abdullah. It comes after a report by the U.S. Congressional Research Service that was released earlier this month and concluded that by many measures, the Taliban are a lot stronger in the military position than they were at any point back in 2001. But in the past days, the Taliban have launched a major offensive in the northern Afghanistan part, which is far from their traditional strongholds in the south and eastern part of the country. Um, Now, I'm not sure if I'm saying this name right either. Habiba Sarabi. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but um, that person is an Afghan government negotiator that's engaging in talks with the Taliban. And with the imminent removal of all United States forces in just a few weeks, the Taliban is currently moving rapidly, resulting in a swift deterioration in the security environment. We are being caught off guard by the scale and scope of setbacks in the north. But the United States has contributed to the deteriorated security situation by consistently saying for more than a decade that it was leaving Afghanistan, which has undermined the Afghan government and strengthens the resolve of the Taliban, who have won at the negotiating table from the Americans, and what they failed to win on the battlefield. And without any swift action by the Biden administration, we could see in Afghanistan a remix of the disastrous U.S. fallout from Saigon in 1975, and the summer of 2014 in Iraq, when ISIS took over much of the country following the U.S. fallout from the country 3 years earlier. And that withdrawal was negotiated by the then Vice President Joe Biden. The Foundation for the Defense of the Democracies, a Washington-based think tank, assesses that the Taliban now control 25% of the Afghan population, while the government controls 40%. And just over a third of the Afghans live in regions that are contested because that's contested between the Taliban and the government. The Taliban have seized over 50 of the country's 370 of the 70 districts since May, according to the United Nations. The premise of the many years of the U.S. Taliban negotiations has been that the United States will draw down military in exchange for the Taliban's severing relations with Al Qaeda, the terrorist organization that harbored at the time of the planning and execution of the terrorist attacks against the U.S. on September 11th of 2001. And this has been, to put it charitably, a charade, according to the United Nations, which reported just this month that the two groups remain closely aligned and they show no signs of breaking up any ties. The United Nations report notes that the Taliban Al Qaeda ties have actually grown deeper than what we assumed. Meanwhile, the U.S. presidents, going back to Barack Obama, have consistently said that the United States is leaving Afghanistan, but in the end, Obama had left about 8,400 troops when he completed his second term. The squatter, Donald Trump, also wanted to go to zero, but he still left about 3,000 in there. In both the case of Obama and Trump, the Pentagon made the case that leaving a relatively small number of troops in Afghanistan acted as an insurance policy to prevent the Taliban from taking over most of the country. Now comes Biden, who has promised to go to zero troops by the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which is a more inappropriate end date for the U.S. President would be hard to conjure. The conjure, basically. And you can't really say that you're going to go down to 20 troops when you can't really make that promise anyway. But the withdrawal of all U.S. troops means that America's NATO allies in Afghanistan are also pulling the plug. And there were 7,000 allied troops in the country when Biden announced he was going to zero, but now they're all heading for the exits. After Biden's announcement, the Australians decided to close their embassy in Kabul. Other countries are going to likely follow. The Biden administration has said that some 6,000 American contractors will have to leave Afghanistan as well. And this move completely undercuts the Afghan Air Force, which has capable pilots, but it relies on American contractors to service the complex helicopters and aircraft as it has been given by the U.S. government. And with those contractors, the Afghan Air Force will be effectively grounded, and the Afghan government would lose a key military advantage over the Taliban. But the U.S. is also leaving in the lurch that the many thousands of Afghans who have helped the U.S. military and the nonprofit, and whatever happened to No Man Left Behind has been documented more than 300 cases since 2014 in which the Afghanistans who had worked with the U.S. military or their family members were killed by militant groups in Afghanistan. But 8,000 Afghans who have worked with the U.S. military are now seeking visas to leave Afghanistan for the United States, as they quite reasonably fear for their lives. But these visas are generally taken many years to process. But they also don't count for a further 53,000 of the family members who are trying to flee the wrath of the Taliban. All of this comes at a time when the Biden administration is admitting the lowest number of refugees in American history, and even fewer than what Trump claimed. According to a report by the International Rescue Committee that was released back in April, the International Rescue Committee found that the Biden administration will likely admit only around 4,000 refugees from around the entire world this fiscal year. And of course, all the hard-won gains that were made by women and minorities in Afghanistan over the past 2 decades now stand at a loss. Now, I'm not sure if I'm saying this one right either. The Hazaras had long discriminated against minority in Afghanistan because of their Shia religion. They make up around 15% of the population, but they were massacred by the Taliban forces before 9/11. According to a Human Rights Watch, the Taliban, which is largely made up of the Pashtun ethnic group, continued to attack the Hazaras, as does the local branch of the ISIS. The Hazaras are now arming themselves in anticipation of return to the ethnic civil war that wrecked Afghanistan in the mid-1990s. The Afghan women are understandably frightened that as the Taliban assert their power, they will lose their rights to work and to be educated. So how might anything be salvaged from this mess? But first, the American contractors who are willing to stay in Afghanistan to service the planes and helicopters of the Afghan Air Force should be allowed to stay. But those contractors could be secured by the elite Afghan commando forces. Second, the Afghans who have helped the U.S. military must have their visa processed expeditiously, even if it means doing so in neighboring countries such as Pakistan. And if the visas can't be issued in a timely fashion, the U.S. government should have a plan to evacuate the thousands of Afghans whose lives may be at risk. Biden promised on Thursday that those who aided the U.S. troops and diplomats are not going to be left behind, and they are welcome here just like everyone else who risked their lives to help us, basically. And third, the Turkish troops must be allowed to continue to maintain security at Kabul airport. Turkey has long secured the key airport as part of its NATO duties, and without security forces at the airport, the United States and other nations will likely have to end their diplomatic presence, as well as international aid organizations, which would be in no one's interest, including the Taliban, who understand how dependent Afghanistan is on international support. Fourth, the United States should make clear to the Taliban that it will intervene military in Afghanistan using airstrikes if the Taliban don't sustain their agreements to sever ties with Al-Qaeda and engage in genuine peace negotiations with the Afghanistan government.